Good morning. Good morning. This is Spirit Journey. This is my second video for the day. I just completed one regarding the riots that are happening in the city. It's November 12th, 2016, and it is about 7:45 a.m. Again, when I woke up this morning, I started thinking about the riots and everything, and it got me thinking about isms, racism. And I've shared with you guys, the people who view my channel, about my background and my experiences in New York City. And I grew up, I was a teenager in the early 80s, 1980s, and my background. I was born and raised in the United States, and so were my parents. Both my grandparents, they came from the Caribbean. And I wasn't, but the concept of racism, I see that racism is taught. I think each one of us are raised with a clean slate, but we're exposed, our environments are such. So a lot of things I just didn't fit socially, I guess because of my background. And my family was very strict, my parents. I wasn't allowed to go a lot of places, and I just stayed home and went to school. I just had a few friends in the neighborhood, one or two friends, but very, very, very conservative background. And I was feeling a little distressed about my experiences with isms. I think my first ism that I was experiencing growing up was what I call now sexism. I'm raised in a household of the majority were males. I have 5 brothers and had a very domineering father. And I have a mother and a sister. But it had a very strong male presence. And I remember, like, at activities, we had guests, or we had special dinners in the house. And I noticed that the men or the males were allowed to sit at the living room, but all the females were told, "Hey, let's go in the kitchen." And I was like, "What's in the kitchen? I want to sit and talk be a part of this conversation." But it's only the females that were encouraged to leave. And then I remember, like, if with women, that women were required when they get married that they have to give up their name, their last name. And I don't, no one ever discussed it with me, but I felt very uncomfortable. And I said, how come I have to change my identity? That's what it's about, my identity, who I was. And what I was had to be catered to men. Playing, to go out and play. That my brothers, again, but I was the youngest, and that's another issue. I was a child, and I was the youngest out of 7 children. So, of course, yes, if you're a little kid, you have to stay home longer. But I didn't see it as such. But my brothers were able to, they had more freedoms. And I said, how come they have more freedom than I do? How come? But the common denominator for me at that time was that they were male. And then I noticed in school, like, I started to learn about, I think it was always there, but I didn't really understand it with racism. But, like, I had, the neighborhood that I lived in was a neighborhood that was changing over. It was now maybe 97% black or West Indian. And we are a neighbor directly next to us, the two houses next to us, were white families. And then they left. They were nice. I was friendly with them. They were nice to me, especially the older lady. She was very kind to me. But I think I wondered about these people. These were the people that you see on TV. My reality was very narrow at that time. Okay, that was up to the age of 10. And then fast forward now, and again, most of my teachers were white. I did have some black teachers too. In the fifth grade, I had a black teacher. Yeah, fifth grade, I had 2 black teachers. But outside of that, all my teachers were white. And I had 1 male teacher that was in the 6th grade. Then now I'm in junior high school. Junior high school was a school that was very, very mixed. You had virtually every demographics. You had people from China, people from Korea, people from India, people from the Caribbean, Spanish speaking and English speaking. You had, I'm trying to see. And of course, American blacks, and you had Greeks. Back then, the European component were primarily people from Greece. I think these kids were born in the States. I think you had 2 Anglo-Saxons, but everyone, basically everyone got along. And again, this is really my real first experience with people that I had constant contact with as classmates. And I think then I started to, it started awareness. It did have a strong black component to school. And I remember back then, this was 1970s, mid-70s, and the African-American kids at that time, they were very aggressive, a lot of aggression, a lot of fighting in comparison to other demographics. And even then, not even West Indians. They were quiet back then. No fighting I saw. And I lived in fear in that school. Fast forward, now I'm in high school. And the things that I saw, now things were starting to settle academically. I was getting introduced for the first time about the importance of good grades. And I noticed that primarily you had the blacks by this time were in remedial. Many blacks were in remedial. And then a lot of the whites and Asians were in the honor classes. And I was wondering what's going on. And I sensed that there was a pull to pull me down. I felt. No one said anything verbally to me, but it's something that I felt like an energy was trying to oppress me. And I was feeling depressed, and I didn't have words for it. I didn't understand what was going on. I think this was part of my awakening. And I was getting mistreated by some of the American blacks that I didn't understand. There was 2 incidences. It was an incident. It was 2 women, but this particular incident. and they were harassing me about the clothes I was wearing, the shoes I was wearing. And at that time, my so-called friends at that time tended to be people from everywhere else but the American South, or what they call African Americans. So the people that seemed to get along with me or want to talk to me were people from the Caribbean, whether they're from Jamaica or Puerto Rico, or whether they're from South America or Europe. And I started thinking that black people were my enemy. And I became afraid of them. Or I should say black women, black American women. And I say this to you, YouTubers. I don't want to offend anybody. I'm just trying to share my experiences and how it brought me to where I am today. And it's for understanding, and my intent is for healing. If you don't deal with your inner demons, you never will be free. And it's by my example in sharing to help others share, whether publicly or behind closed doors or within themselves, so they can move forward. So it was hard for me. And some black American friends that I did have, they were very nice to me. There were two in particular. They're very nice. If you're nice, you're nice. But it's just at that time that those who verbally attacked me were usually black women, black American women. And yes, there were some black American women who were very nice to me. But I think part of the wake-up call was when this one woman, she was a dark-skinned black woman, and she said to me, "Oh, well, because of your color, they're going to treat you that something." But I forget exactly how she worded it. But what she was trying to convey, I felt, was that I'm not her friend, and that I'm going to get over her. I'm going to have more than her, and that I'm a part of it. And this was the first time I ever heard this type of talk of one black to another and about colorism. My father is extremely dark-skinned, the same color as this woman. So I didn't have anything against her color, or felt it was a privilege to look the way I did. For me, it's like a flower. The flowers come in all different colors and shades. The rose. You have pink roses, red roses, orange. You have all these different type of colors. So for me, in my experience, what she said was very foreign to me because I wasn't raised in colorism. And she knew about colorism. And she said it in contempt against me. That it's something that I want, that I want to relish and want to use it for my advantages against her. And I was hurt because I didn't understand that thinking. And I liked this person. We used to talk. And we still talked after that. But it did hurt my feelings. And I think that was, my first real introduction to racism that my fellow African Americans / Black Americans are living with. Okay, now fast forward again. Now I graduated from high school. Now I'm in the workforce. Had gotten a job maybe 2 months after graduation, and it was a family friend that got me the job. And there I was working for the city, and back then a lot of American blacks, worked in civil service. And there I was exposed for the first time of homosexuality. A black woman had shared with me that she was, well, it came out, she had passed a note to me that she was bi. And then I learned that term meant bisexual. And she was from the South. She was from Virginia. And again, this is 1980. And this is just 20 years after all those race riots. And I remember how bitter she was and how that she was angry with me. And I understand now that I had a very pro-white stance. And again, I thought, I guess with my training, my experience, I should say, not training, but it will influence your thinking, that back then, who I thought were my friends, what she, in hindsight, was trying to teach me was that wake up, and that you're living you're thinking like a white person, so-called white person. You're thinking like you're not someone that's affected by racism. She also did drugs. She tried to get me to do cocaine. I got to see cocaine for the first time by this woman. We were in Washington Square Park, and she said, "Oh, because it was during lunch hour, and I'm sitting, and she asked for me to use my nail file. Could I use it?" So I thought, okay. I thought she had it for her nails, and she took out this white powder, and I was like, "What?" And then she wiped it on my sleeve. "Oh, you want some?" I said, "No." And then she wiped it on my arm. I thought that was nasty. She was awful. But it was an awakening. And then, fast forward again, I was there at that job for 2 years. And I didn't like what I saw. That job had, you see, like the blacks at that job, many of them had substance abuse problems. You had a lot of just people were angry, and you got paid good money because it was a union. You got union scale. And back then I got paid $7 or $7.50 an hour. And this is 36 years ago. But I worked part-time. It was only 19 hours a week. So that job was equivalent to a full-time job. And I think back then the minimum wage might have been $2.50 or $3 something an hour. So I was relatively comfortable. I lived at home, and I paid money to my parents every month. I mean, every week, every time I got paid, I had to give them a portion of my money. But I started to see things on the job, and I didn't like the position where blacks were in New York City back then in the early 80s. I felt the tension. I felt the cries of Black America. And then you had another component to it. Hispanic women, primarily from Puerto Rico. And I had what I thought friends, as I said earlier, friends in quote. I had friends in high school, friends from Puerto Rico, and I was again being introduced to isms and racism and colorism. And I had a friend from Puerto Rico who I had in my house. I was in her home. And then she started to say things of a racial nature. She was a very fair-skinned Puerto Rican. She almost looked like a white person. She even had blonde hair and blue eyes, natural blue. But she had a curly afro, like my hair, but blonde. I mean, a true blonde. And I cared for this person, and we were both going through things emotional. We were going through turmoil at home, and she was in a relationship with a brown-skinned Hispanic, and he was very abusive to her. She asked me questions about my family, and what she was trying to find out was our stance about racism or about Hispanic, specifically Puerto Ricans. And I didn't understand that type of questioning because, again, in my household, we didn't talk about things like that against Puerto Ricans, or it was foreign to me. And she asked me, one of the questions she asked was about dating. Are your parents are open about? And I remember my response was that my parents would prefer me to date people in my group. I think most parents want their kids to marry and date within their social, their cultural system. Not that they're bigots. And I think back then it was for protection, because racism and things against blacks was a reality. And they just know socially that it's going to be difficult for you. So that's what I said. I said, well, my parents just prefer, and so she gets angry. But in her family, they don't want people. So the parents wouldn't want to open the door for me when I came over. Things like that. They would change their phone numbers, and they only give out their new number to their Spanish-speaking friends. And I'm English-speaking. Things like that. And I didn't understand what was going on. I said, how come she wouldn't give me a phone number? What happened? But then I would later get it. And I didn't understand why mother didn't want to open the door for us. Fast forward, now this same person is to get married. I met her husband at the same time. She had a sister that I was also friends with, that I thought we were friends with, and we all socialized. It was the first or second time that I was at an activity with her outside of school. This is past high school. It was in an area, predominantly white area, not even a Puerto Rican area. It was in Queens. The edge of Queens, and I thought everything was okay. We all met. I met her who was to be her future husband, so we all knew each other. But I noticed this particular friend pulling away from me, and now when she's about to get married, I sensed something that I'm not going to be in the wedding. And I thought her best friend. Fast forward again, that she decided she didn't want to socialize with me anymore. And one day, I called her, and she hung up the phone on me. It was an awakening. And at the time, it hit close to home, because I thought this was a friend. And I realized that at that time, the so-called friends that I had, that, we were all being affected by what we call isms, racism, about sexism, about these things that socially stratify us. And it wasn't something that I created, but it was something that became. But the positive side to this is, if that didn't happen and other things, I had a brother who was dating someone from Puerto Rico, and I had a fight with her, a verbal fight over the phone, when she started insulting black people. And I didn't understand why she was acting this way. So you're dating my brother? What do you mean? Why are you even with our family then? I don't understand this. And what I learned that sometimes people get angry with you. Like my friend from Puerto Rico, or family from Puerto Rico, when they were asking me these questions. It's not that they wanted to know how I felt or how my family. They knew how their family was. That their family taught racism and colorisms. And why I'm sad about that is that we all have basically the same history of slavery. It didn't matter that if you were sent to Jamaica or Georgia or Haiti or Puerto Rico or Curacao or Alabama. We all came on the same ships. It's just our slave or our oppressors spoke different languages and had different religions. And we absorbed the traditions of those people. But now in this century, in this decade, we believe in the identity of those people who oppressed us. So now, if someone says something about a particular group, you're identifying with the group that oppressed you. We have to come together as a people. There are areas in New York City that I cannot live in because I'm not from their group. I don't speak their language. And they're trying to push you out. They may not say it verbally, but their body language. Or if you're going to get a particular service, your hair done, and they don't want to do your hair. Things like that. And then now fast forward again. The 2016 election. You have people out there that's trying to separate us again. Get us to hate each other. But they are masquerading their intent. So I have all these years of being programmed about isms against myself and others, and to second guess people. Are they my friend or aren't they not? We're all living in pins and needles. I've met also white Americans. I used to think growing up that they had no problems, no pain, no isms that they're faced with. I met a lady yesterday. I mean, I've seen her around. She's a dog walker, and as you guys know, I have dogs. And I used to see this lady, when I was walking my dogs in general, and she would share with me different things that happened to her. You could say that she was probably on the streets at one point, and but she has a lot of pain. She has a lot of death in her family. A brother, a parent, really bad things that happen. And I, at one point, started to avoid her because it was getting too heavy for me. And I didn't want to, I felt almost that I was her therapist. And not that I didn't want to help her, but I just wasn't ready for her issues. But I want the best for this person. But when I bumped into her in the street yesterday, and she shared with me about, again, an anniversary of her father's death. Why I mention this story is that what we might think out there, that certain races of people, she was a woman of Irish ancestry. And I've met other Irish people in my background, and someone I've even gone out with on a date. And some of them face problems of alcoholism, at least the person I went out with, his father. And I'm not trying to stereotype Irish people. Anybody can have a drinking problem. But I'm just using it as an example of a story that I experienced, people who I experienced. And I mentioned the story about these individuals that they had pain. And when I was on the phone with this person I went out with, his father was in the background yelling and cursing, and it was drama. But the kid himself was a very nice, quiet-spoken fellow. I'm seeing that you have white people who are experiencing pain, emotional distress. Another Irish person who was telling me a story about her daughter. He was a grown man, and he had a daughter who was dating this Jewish fellow. And the Jewish family threatened the guy and said that if you marry her, we will disinherit you. His family had money. So he stopped seeing the girl. And I can tell the father was grieved, and he shared me this story, and I'm not from his community. But ironically, I do have Irish ancestry, though, from Cork County, Ireland. But either way, it wasn't something that I knew back then of my ancestry. This is new knowledge that I learned 2 years ago. But this is something that happened over 20 years ago about the person who had the daughter who was dating a Jewish fellow. And this was his reality. And it hurt the father. And I felt his pain. And it was the first time that a white person ever shared with me their experiences of being rejected. So I mention all this to say that we are all facing isms. And sometimes you have a third party who relies on your pain and discomfort. Let's say unemployment. Let's say an outsider is taking over jobs in your community. All these things are happening. But it's happening globally, not just in New York or in the United States. It is global. We are all affecting each other. And you have this other third party who's relying on our sensitivities, relying on my sensitivities of all these isms, black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, all these events. When we live on this planet, we're going to have experiences. I'm trying to say, to warn you of this third party who wants to tap into your anger and cause chaos, wars, famines, and the like. Isms of any kind, even one's sexual orientation, that's another party, that's another element that is used for division. I'm learning that I have to learn to forgive these people, family members, all the harm, physical harm, mental harm that was done to me. But all of us are experiencing pain and discomforts, that we're not isolated. It's not an isolated event. It's not just happening to you. It's happening to all of us. Let's see beyond the illusion and see the Wizard of Oz that's behind the curtain that is causing this division in us. I know this is a long video, and I'm going to end it now. Don't believe the hype. And I have to tell that to myself too. Don't believe the hype. Really, listen to this video more than once and really understand where I'm really coming from. And that is not about hating. It's about opening our eyes to the deception that's out there. Please feel free to comment below, to share this video with friends and family members. You can subscribe to Spirit Journey and to give me the thumbs up. Peace, love, joy, and safety. Pray to your higher power for deliverance. Bye-bye, guys.